All right, Frank Jester. Thanks for coming on today.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. I've been intrigued reading up on your manual here about your shape and everything. Tell us a little bit about that and how that came about.
Well, I retired from teaching, and I went to school. I figured I had to go back to school, and I took the science class. And in the science class, they covered Platonic forms, and which I hadn't had exposure to. But in the meantime, years before, I had always wanted to make a seven-sided form, but never did it. And so this was the perfect opportunity, and so I decided that this would be the time. And so I studied and looked at all the books that this teacher had given me on seven, and found nothing. So I decided, well, I'm just going to try it. So what I did is I went down, took a walk down the river, and I found a seed and some sticks and some mud, and I put them together, and this was the first thing I ever made. Can you see that?
Hold it up and where your face is.
Okay.
Go ahead and sit back a little bit. There you go.
All right, there it is.
Yep, that's perfect.
And I took 7 sticks and pushed them into a piece of mud.
Right. And
I tried to get the equal distances between all the sticks all the way around, and I did. And it's just like a little 5th grader could have done this.
Right.
And so I was, this is okay. So I went home and I connected all the points with triangles, and it made 10 faces. So I knew I was in trouble. 7 points should make 7 faces, but it doesn't. It makes 10. So that got me going, and so I studied and studied and studied, did everything I could to try to figure this out. And so I did everything with measurements and calculations and so forth, and I got nowhere. So I decided to go back to my training. My training is art. I was in art. I was a sculptor major, and so I approach it artistically, and that's the way I found it. I found the 7-sided form artistically by taking a piece of clay and starting to dig out of the sphere of clay. I started to dig out 7 holes. I knew where the holes were because I had this, so I just kept digging away, and I kept the same amount of clay dust in 7 piles. So I tried to eliminate equal amounts of little volcanoes.
So what do you think it was, Frank, that inspired this to begin with? Because I have a feeling, like Platonic solids, it seems to me that any sacred geometry form is probably a 3-dimensional form that comes from an energy, probably from another dimension. Where do you think this your new solid comes from? Did it come from inspiration? Do you think it's because of our collective consciousness and individual consciousness expanding and opening up new possibilities? Why has it taken 2,000 years for this to come about, do you think?
Okay, well, that's I started out with a lot of work. This could be months and months of work, so we'll leave that apart. Now, where does it come from, and why hasn't it been here for 2,000 years? That's a good question. I've asked myself that question for a long time. And the only thing I can come up with is that we weren't ready for it. It's asymmetrical. And the human being, from what I've heard, is not able to, in the past, to handle the asymmetrical. And this is. And even today there are people who can't handle this form, even though it's perfect. Mathematically, the surface areas are absolutely perfect.
So if we couldn't handle it, that's implying that there's an implication here that there's something behind this. What is it about this that we couldn't handle before, you think? What is it about this shape that makes it to where we're just now getting to the point where we can handle it?
Because this shape is an expanded form. All Platonic forms are contractions. They're all based on contraction. Everything is going to the center. Everything is more and more dense. This is lighter and lighter in that it's opening up. That's what happens. I opened up a Platonic form, and this is what came.
So this isn't a contraction. This is an expansion?
Absolutely.
Okay. So how does this relate to the heart? I was reading this on some of your information.
The geometry of the left ventricle is based on a vortex. This form is a geometry of the vortex. It's the first one. So I found that when you spin it, it makes two circles. And the two circles that it makes are exactly the size of the outside of the heart in the mitral valve. And also the same proportion and so forth. So this is the seven-sided form in minimum surfaces. And of course, this is the left ventricle. And it starts out, the form starts out, it looks like this. What you do is you take this and you dip it into soap. And then you bring it out of the soap and you take a straw and you blow a bubble.
Oh, I see.
That bubble is called minimum surfaces, and that's the shape of that bubble. And if you look at the left ventricle, the human heart, and anything on the internet that talks about the heart, you will see that the left ventricle looks like this.
Why do you think our heart is on the left side?
Because the heart sits in a cube. The original design of the heart is in a cube. And if you put the cube in the center of the body, okay, the form I call a chestahedron goes to the left side because that's root 3 in a cube. So originally, the scaffolding that's gone, which is the seven, this is scaffolding, it's gone, but the form is still there, okay? And it's on the left side because of the geometry.
So I was reading something in your material where you think that when the heart pumps, it pumps a vortex, right?
Yes, yes.
And if we could pump it a few more degrees, it would open up another level of consciousness?
Well, this is what the heart does on the inside geometrically, okay? What it does is it vortexes.
Right.
Now, if the heart right now, the average that it turns is 30 degrees, but it sits in a cube at 15, so it leaves us a little bit more until it gets to 90. At 90 degrees, what happens is the top of this form, okay, closes, and inside there is a new chamber. Now, that chamber is the closest that we've come so far in finding out how a fifth chamber could actually possibly develop in the human heart. And anytime anybody takes and researches a pig's heart or a human heart by a cardiologist or whatever, you'll never find it. And the reason you'll never find it is because it goes in and out in less than 1 second. And it's already the wall of the human heart, except that it twists about 5 more degrees, then it makes a new chamber based on the heart that exists right now.
Huh. Yeah, I noticed behind you there you got the Flower of Life.
Yes.
Yeah, we've done all the Drew Vallow Flower of Life workshops, so I have a little bit of background in sacred geometry anyway.
Okay.
So what other kind of inventions have you come up with?
You mean with Flower of Life?
Yeah, with sacred geometry in particular, but yeah.
Well, I've never taken a workshop from this guy, but I've seen both his books. And he's really into the Flower of Life. Which is the most profound and most unbelievable geometry in the history of mankind, as far as I'm concerned. 19 circles, that's just unbelievable. Well, I have found from the Flower of Life that it is three-dimensional. Now, the closest that the sacred geometrist comes in is that it's Merkaba. This is what's inside the Flower of Life and so forth. But you see, the problem is that this may be the case, and it certainly is. But the problem is that this is, this is 4 or 5,000 years old.
Right.
Okay, so, I mean, we need to move on to something newer, okay, and not just dwell in the past, although there's nothing wrong with the past at all. I study the past all the time. But, you see, they don't know, is the outside, they don't know where the Earth is in this. If you take the seismic studies that the scientists use to determine this, the core of the Earth, the mantle of the Earth, the outside of the Earth, it doesn't work in the flower of life. The core doesn't ever reach one of the circles, or it doesn't, it's different. Well, I find out exactly where it is, and that's what I'm going to do. And I give this lecture, is I'm going to show this. I'm going to show this how this works. I'm sorry, that thing is ringing here.
That's all right.
So this is very exciting because it shows the size of the core of the Earth.
That's Richard calling you. He's probably going to call me next.
Well, I just tried to shut it off.
So where do you think this is taking us, Frank? Because, I mean, obviously, when you look on this planet, we need some help, and help usually comes in the form of new information. How do you think this information can help us as individuals and collectively?
Well, inside the Earth is a heart. It has the same geometry as our heart.
And it beats according to the Schumann resonance?
No, what is that now again?
So I guess the heartbeat would be the Schumann resonance. It's about 7 point something hertz per second.
Well, okay, so that's somebody else's work, not mine. I don't know that. I've read it and so forth, but that doesn't relate to my work. I can only relate what I've found.
Okay, what did you find?
Well, I found that the geometry of the heart is also the geometry of the Earth, and through the aurora, okay, it breathes just like our heart. It has the same movement, and the aurora enters the Earth and leaves the Earth just like the blood. Through the mitral valve and out the aorta. And the aorta and the mitral valve in our heart is also being in the same geometry in the Earth. And this is unbelievable that this can happen. As far as the hertz and all the other things that the scientists come up with, well, that's all fine, okay? But they don't understand the phenomena. All they have is the phenomena. And the problem is that the phenomena stops them. And they come to a screeching halt because they don't know what's behind it. I know what's behind it. Only because of this work that I've gone to.
Yeah, usually the scientific research is the parameters of that research are so rigid that they're trying to figure out a way to get beyond their own limitations in scientific research right now. And it keeps pushing them. And I've noticed they're using the word consciousness more and more, which is a good thing. Yeah,
the scientists, the scientists are interested in developing measurements, and they develop more and more machines that measure what the machine before measured, and they keep measuring. Okay, that's all they do. That's what they do. And that's good that they do that. I'm glad there are these people that are that interested in these measuring devices. But there's really a limit to that. They're, like you say, consciousness. Okay, well, I say there's something behind the phenomena. And the measuring, okay, is not it.
Yeah, matter of fact, the limitations to measuring it is every time we measure something, we're interacting with it and changing what we're measuring. So it sort of becomes a moot point at a certain place in our research. And I think this is where it's taking us into a different realm of inquiry. That's I guess in a Heinleinian sense, you have to grok something. You have to really understand it with a different part of your mind than just the left brain or just the right brain. And I think as an artist that delves into these things, you probably realize that it takes a balance of both brains to really have a comprehensible aspect of what you're trying to teach or learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I found this artistically, okay? I balance the work between art and science. It's not one or the other, okay? It's both, and you have to balance it. And if you don't balance it, then you're out of sync. Because you see, the scientists get stuck, okay? They don't know what to do, okay? The artist can get stuck too if he gets too subjective. One's objective, one is subjective, and both of those are important when you bring them together. Okay, so when you are an objective person, also you have to look at the subjective, because then you don't get stuck. And I think that's what's going on, is that more and more people are looking at the subjective part of our soul life in relationship to science. And I'm hoping that the scientists will start looking at the soul part and looking at the artistic side, because until we bring these two together, we're just going to be stuck.
Yeah, I guess some of the first people that's done this is like Pythagoras, Leonardo da Vinci. It seemed like they had a good blend of science and art both.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why they've got so much done. You know, I mean, it's not one or the other. It's all about balance, and that's what the human heart does. The human heart is the organ of balance. What the human heart has done, according to my research, is it slows the blood down and stops it, and then reverses it. Okay, so it's taking a winding and an unwinding, and the heart does both of those. If you're always winding things up, then you're stressed, whatever. If you're always unwinding, then you're too relaxed and whatever. Okay, and this is what the heart does. This in the earth itself. So balance is the secret of all this.
Yeah, the in-breath and out-breath of life is something that I constantly try to remind myself, because I get stressed out sometimes. Then I just have to take a deep breath and just let it go. You know?
Yes, I did the same thing.
So we're looking forward to you coming here to Chico and giving this lecture.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm looking forward to it too.
You're going to be bringing some of your artwork, I guess, huh?
Well, I'm going to bring in the Flower of Life, and I'm going to bring the third dimension. I'm going to show you how it works with the earth. Then I'll show you how it works with the heart. And you'll see some geometry that's never been seen before, because I have never really given a lecture like this. And I have a model that I can show you that's almost 3 feet diameter. So you can only see it from the audience, but you can come up and look at it, and you can see that the artistic and the science are together.
Well, we have some people eager to listen to you when you come here.
Well, good. I hope so.
So I guess we'll be seeing you this coming weekend.
Yeah, I'll be here Saturday.
All right, Frank. Well, listen, thank you for your time.
Sure.
And I'll let you get back to Richard now. He's probably eagerly awaiting a phone call.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for having me on your program.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.